to another episode of Fireside with the Chiefs. We're here with independent Senate District 26 candidate Adam Watson, clan mother Lacey Flanagan of the Blue Holly Clan, and Dr. David Journey. And go ahead and Adam, tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from originally. I don't know a lot of your background.
Sure.
Go ahead with your education and where you're from. And
Yeah, I'm from Houston, Texas. My wife and I moved up here about 3 years ago. We moved to the old dairy farm and branch just north of the co-op there. Actually, we had y'all out yesterday, 2 days ago. It's all running together with the campaign at this point.
2 days ago.
My wife and I were both born and raised in the city and really good private educations. I worked in law for about 15 years. And kind of coinciding with me getting together with my wife and me getting out of the legal industry, I got a job that I could work from home and could go anywhere. So we decided we wanted to get a little bit of land, bought a little place outside of Houston, about 45 minutes south, and quickly realized that we really liked that lifestyle and being out of the rat race and all of that. And that the little bit of land we bought wasn't enough, but it was as much as we could afford in that part of the state. So, happenstance, my business was also looking to build a facility outside of Texas, and I approached them and said, hey, if I go with it, can I pick where it is? I said, you know what, sure. So we looked all over the place. We looked in Oklahoma, we looked in New Mexico, we looked in Nevada, kind of wanting to get too far away from family back in Houston, but far enough away that we could afford more and find a little slice of heaven for ourselves. And we did. We just kind of scrolling through Craigslist at random one night, found a little dairy farm in Branch, Arkansas. And this may not speak to my good business sense, but I signed the contract sight unseen. Next day, we saw it for the first time at the inspection. We drove up here for that. Everything looked good and we went forward with it. And kind of here we are. We had our first kiddo, Sterling. He will be 2 on Tuesday. About a year after we moved up here, and then about a year and 10 months after we moved up here, they announced the prison. So I enjoyed my year and 10 months of absolute peace and quiet and figuring out how to work cows and enjoying seeing the stars and all of the things. And now here we are right back in the rat race.
Right. Yeah, that's an interesting time frame. That's when we really, as the tribe, started to do a lot of community work here. It's kind of about the exact same time frame. We start to get established and started, really enjoying helping our community. Then all of a sudden, boom,
right,
everything changes, or the threat of everything changing.
Sure.
So it's funny. Our timing and destiny is a little bit intertwined there. With gravel and grit, was that something you formed before this prison?
No.
Just as a result of?
Yeah, it was as a result of the prison. So, right after the town hall, we saw the community trying to figure out how to organize, essentially, right? And Franklin County River Valley Coalition came online. And my wife and I kind of had that moment where we looked at each other on the couch like, well, we have to help. We can do something. We have to do it. So we kind of jumped into figuring out how we could get plugged in with them and the rest of the people trying to organize and went from there. And that's where this all got started, is working with them on, what are our legal options? What can we do in the legislature? Because we knew the session was upcoming. And it just got to a point with that organization that a couple of us thought we needed to be doing as much as possible down in Little Rock, and they were thinking they wanted to focus on the legal fight. So we kind of spun off Gravel and Grit from that. And the idea was, obviously the main focus, the main opposition is the prison, because that's what everybody is trying to resist right now. But as we were having conversations with the community, we were seeing all of these different areas that people were saying, it feels like we're not being listened to here. It feels like we can't have an impact with whatever we do. And then we have public officials telling us, hey, your story is really similar to what's going on over in this corner of the state or that corner of the state. You're all telling the same story. You don't know each other exist. And political power always comes in numbers. I mean, I think that's a big reason that Franklin County was picked for this project to begin with. There's not a lot of political power here because there's not a lot of population here. So Gravel and Grit was set up as kind of a framework for, whatever the project is, where these small rural communities feel like they're being not even necessarily stepped on, but just not heard, or questions not being answered, or transparency thresholds not being met, as just a mechanism to bring all of that under one umbrella, to hopefully have a way to build credibility and not necessarily political power, but enough influence to be able to get answers to questions, to have people listen to these concerns.
Right. Yeah. Right. Yeah. I know this has really brought together an interesting group of people, and like I said, we had that moment where we just had to. It was just out of the blue, getting the punch you don't see is the one that knocks you out, and we just got this sprung on us and said you're gonna take it and like it, but we I think have built a far better resistance than they ever thought that we would have to this kind of overreach.
I think you're right. There's not so many, but in situations like this, there's always silver linings, right? And I think the biggest one for me is not only getting to know the community way better than I ever would have, kind of being an outsider, being new here. It's a process that takes time in small rural places, which is understandable. But this, number one, accelerated that. So for me personally, that's a silver lining. But for the community as a whole, I mean, I don't know how you look at this place and not just be prouder than hell of what everybody has done. And to your point about, kind of a broad coalition, I've never had anybody here ask me what my political leanings are. Who cares? Who cares? We've got something to do. And everybody just kind of rolled up their sleeves and said, let's do it. What do we have to do? Point us in a direction. That's really impressive to me. And I think it serves as a really good example for a lot of places around the state, because if we're honest about Arkansas, most places look like this. They don't look like Little Rock. They don't look like Northwest Arkansas. They look like Charleston. They look like Ozark. They look like the rest of this district. So I think we're setting a really good example, or at least I would hope.
I think so too. I think they're definitely Little Rock is definitely going to rethink the way that they approach projects like this. They're going to do a little bit more in-depth study about who is there, their capabilities. Do they really want this? Will they resist? So on and so forth. And they should. They should be more considerate of what the people in the area want, instead of showing up and just cramming it down throats.
Absolutely. And the weird thing about this is that this was really the experiment. I mean, historically, the way that they do things is more by the process that we've been asking for, right? I mean, if you want to put a prison somewhere, you send DOC into the top 5, 6, 7 locations, and whoever's the most accepting of their promises, that's where it ends up going. You don't do everything behind closed doors and end up here 15 months later with $1 million culvert and scratching your head wondering what happened.
$1 million culvert that should have had a 404 permit because it interferes with a relatively permanent waterway flowing into a tributary, and the Corps is notified of that, and it's supposed to be under investigation in Little Rock.
Yeah.
We'll see if they'll do anything about it.
Yeah. And look, to that point, I think the way they decided to do this project, it's like anything else in life. If you do step 1 wrong, by the time you get to step 10, if you make a mistake in step 10, you got to unwind the whole process, because everything's on bad foundation to begin with.
Right.
So, if they can't put freaking culvert in the right way, I think we're going to have serious problems trying to spend $1 billion out there, and every permit, everything that goes with it. I mean, I don't know about y'all, but I'm on board to keep complaining and fighting this the whole way through. I think the rest of the community is too. So if they can't do a culvert right, if they can't purchase land the right way, then I think we're going to have a problem for a long time.
Yeah.
The as a real estate broker,
Your hair turning gray.
Yes, the excuse that they didn't tell the community about it because they didn't want to create a bidding war after it went under contract.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and thinking that nobody understands how real estate transactions work. How are you going to create a bidding war after it's under contract? Nobody else.
Trust
you,
already.
You can't take another offer just because it's higher if you're already under contract.
So I don't know if y'all have.
I may have yelled that at the town hall.
Well, and people like you would have known that at the town hall, but and so I don't know if y'all have gone back and watched that recently, knowing what we know now. But there are so many similar examples of it was precisely that attitude of like, sit down, shut up, you'll learn to like it.
Yeah.
And you don't know what you don't know. We know better. And we're going to tell you how it is. And watching that back, now a year plus later and kind of pinpointing all of those things, I don't know. It's just really insulting and infuriating.
Yeah.
They appear to be fabricating the information. When I first saw the geotechnical report, there was no comparison. There was nothing there, and there was nothing to compare. So there was no geographic information analysis done, and they said it, but it was not presented in the public information that was released.
Mm-hmm.
So it means they had already made the decision, and they just picked the one that they wanted.
Yeah, when you're saying things like this is the best spot in the state for this kind of project, and then you're doing your studies, those studies are kind of automatically, they can be disregarded because they're just, it's like confirmation bias.
We provided them drill rig information that indicated the local drillers had 30 times tried to drill in that area. And they knew they were going to, and indeed, every one of their holes were, and we told them they were going to be. And you have to hit a fissure in order to get any water, and then it's very, very little.
And that just one thing on top of another. It's if they had done their studies to see more about who was here again. We had an executive proclamation recognition back in 2015 from Judge Bowman, of recognition of the Judge Bowman.
Yeah, I remember seeing that.
And similar recognitions by other county judges all over the state. It's not like they didn't know we were here if they just looked a little bit or made a couple of phone calls. The majority of people, I'd say 10,000 out of 17, I think I've said it on this podcast before, are lineal descendants.
Sure.
Here in Franklin County. There is a high concentration of our lineal descendants and tribal enrolled citizens that we have here. So that's I like to think that's a part of the reason we're fighting so hard because that's who we are. We're the fighters, the ones the Cherokees called when they needed somebody to fight. Mm-hmm. So I think that's a big part of why we're resisting too so much, and why we're so open to working together. Our tribe is one of the most inclusive by nature, and we would not only include people in, but we were members of confederacies, and so we worked with other tribes, or we just outright hated them completely and tried to wipe them off the face of the earth.
Hey, you can't get along with everybody.
Can't get along with everybody. We try to get along, though. We really do.
Yeah.
It's always been our MO. Right?
Yeah.
How do you think that the prison will negatively affect the communities within your district? We all know that there are some positive effects to having economic growth, but I think this is the wrong kind. So, and it's obvious that the cons are going to outweigh the pros. So, what do you think the negative effects are going to be?
Where to start?
Mm-hmm.
And look, even on the economic benefits, right? I don't think they're as expansive as folks want to claim they are. When you look at towns that are thrilled about the prison facilities that they have, it's typically more than one. It's typically been there for a very long time. And this kind of cycle plays out where a prison goes in and everybody that can afford to leaves.
Yeah.
And that gets replaced by people that are beholden to this kind of industrial complex that is our carceral system, where, inmates are working in the community under our forced labor exception laws and our Constitution. They're making things on site. They're buying things that are made in the community. It becomes something like having a railroad through town, where the lifeblood of the area is dependent on it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not supportive of that, you don't move there. You don't live there. Not everybody can get out, and the people that are left are, there to either submit or be unhappy. So, going back to your first question about where I'm from, when I mentioned that we had bought a little piece of land outside of Houston, it was 4 miles from an 1,800 bed facility. So I know a little bit about what communities look like that have these things brought into them, and they're kind of desolate. Every county across Arkansas that has a state prison in it has a declining population.
Mm.
That's not happenstance.
It's like they intend to put the prisons in the declining population areas in spite of the lack of infrastructure.
Sure.
And it's because of politicos, I think, in Fort Smith, for instance. We have Fort Chaffee. We have a prison facility there. It's being used right now by ICE. It could be adaptively reused very cost effectively and fit the federal mission that President Trump has set for our governor.
Sure.
So, and this is a federal action. So, I'm sorry, the federal actions, undertakings have to be assessed for their impact to the global community under the National Environmental Policy Act and the National Historic Preservation Act. So they have failed miserably to do any. Of course, I now understand that we're taking Greenland and Aruba. So why not take Charleston? We want to take Greenland. I'm sorry.
No.
I may have walked in the wrong direction.
No. We can edit anything.
We'll make you say something else.
I can do that.
No.
I look. I think to just more simply answer the question is, and this quote has come out in a couple of different spots, so not to be super redundant, but it is a really good encapsulation of the problem. Is it just takes over the DNA of a town, and people don't call them prison towns because they have a Walmart. They call them prison towns because they have a prison. And there's a lot of things that come with that. And that is not to say that I'm not in favor of economic development. I just think it needs to be responsibly done and at a scale that the existing infrastructure or the attainably improved infrastructure can support, that the workforce can support, that the community embraces, all of these things that are critical to not only the community's success, but the project's success. And we don't have any of those things here.
Right. What was your specifically what was your law background? What did you?
So no educational background in it really. I needed a summer job when I moved back from college and walked into a law firm and, got a job organizing documents and stuff. And in Texas, I'm actually not sure if it works the same way in Arkansas, but in Texas, with a X number of years of on-the-job experience and a couple tests and all of that, you can become a paralegal. So
Paralegal
I was a paralegal for 13, 15 years. We did commercial real estate and litigation.
Well, you might be able to give us some pointers on commercial real estate.
Sure.
Is that part of kind of what helps you in your business now? I don't really understand what your business there is. I know you do something with propane.
Yes, it's honestly completely separate. That is, I do business development sales for them, so that is really just people skills and selling. It's like selling anything else. It's just it is a propane product. It's just an ultra high purity for specialized applications. So, a lot of just talking to people and seeing what they need, and I kind of liken that more to politics than the law thing. The law experience helps a lot with reading and drafting legislation and understanding what the laws are currently, and if you have a goal, how do you change the law to align with that goal? So the experience certainly helps there with politics, but I would think the sales experience helps more with going out into the community and figuring out what people need and translating that into actionable legislation.
Right. I think you have to have a fine balance there. I think if you get too far leaning to the legal side, then you're in danger of being in a position where you think you need to make rules for people. When you're not personable, you forget that there's the human aspect you have to consider. You're there as a servant, so you need to balance. And I think those are both good skills to have, because then you have people who are good at talking to people, making friends, and they really don't know what they're doing. They don't know how to do a job beyond that. Mm-hmm. So there's both sides of the spectrum.
Keep my comments to myself.
Yeah. We'll shift gears a little bit here.
Sure.
As a federally recognized tribe through treaty, a lot of our hope for a better quality of life for our citizens is solidified by the United States Constitution. Article 6, Section 2 states that treaties are the supreme law of the land, and our treaties give us substantial authority and hope, kind of not only in this fight, but just as in what we can provide for our people, because those arrangements set, in those treaties where they have to be honored because our ancestors died and sacrificed, and so much for our people. And these treaties are kind of a result of that conflict and not a fair trade by any means, but some means of compensation, the rights that we have in those treaties. So it's important for us that those are honored. And I've never really talked to an independent candidate or individual about their stance on the United States Constitution. How do you regard the Constitution? Some people in politics just see it as an obstacle, or a bygone document, or a way to keep progress from happening. But I'm just curious on your stance of the United States Constitution.
Yeah, I think that's a dangerous way to look at kind of our foundational legal documents, right? I look at it as a framework, a very important framework. And, I think originalist or textualist, those words get thrown around a lot. But as somebody who has, a deep regard for the legal industry and what laws mean and why we have them, I think what the Constitution says is important. I think there's a lot of knee-jerk reactions in politics that, well, if there's a problem, let's go change the Constitution. And that's not its purpose. Its purpose is to set our baseline. And if we need something that adds on to that framework, then we have a process to build that in the law. So I think our state constitution here gets amended a lot. I understand the need for that in certain circumstances. But as far as the U.S. Constitution or federal kind of guiding principles, it's a really high bar to change it, and it should be. Because it's a really, really, it's a great document, number one, but it's a really important framework for how we do everything here.
Right.
I'd like to make an observation. Taxation without representation. That is what we're encountering right now.
Mm-hmm.
That's the reason we left England.
Mm-hmm.
We weren't being represented, and we tried to escape taxes.
We don't
But-
much tea.
And dressed up as Mohawk Indians,
Mm-hmm.
by the way.
Yeah.
So, the white men have been dressing up as Indians for quite a while and throwing tea in the harbor. But it seems like right back. This is a perfect example of taxation without representation.
Mm-hmm.
It is.
That's what Gravel and Grit has actually brought to is, we're not represented in this decision making, and we're paying the taxes, and they're here on our land base.
Yeah, and I've always thought what's interesting about that concept is, and Jennifer Stanford brought it, Colt Shelby's attorney in the litigation about moving up the special election. She brought this up in one of her pleadings, is that concept of taxation, no taxation without representation, predates our Constitution. This is an idea that is so ingrained in Americanness that it wasn't even enshrined in the Constitution, because it was one of those natural rights that is just, of course we don't have representation or taxation without representation. So yeah, I think there's a lot of people they're the same people that get on Facebook and say, well, we don't have a democracy, we have a republic. Fair. But that doesn't mean that the citizens' voices stop at the voting booth, right? You still have to give consideration to their wants and needs, and involve them in the process to the extent that they're willing to be involved.
Right. A constitutional republic with democratic processes embedded.
Right.
You couldn't have you could attempt an entire, a full-scale democracy.
It'd be horribly inefficient.
Yeah, I think it would be dangerous, just because people can be in large masses led by their emotion so easily. And nowadays there are so many ways to manipulate those emotions through the media and algorithms and things like that. But as you're very open to inclusion, as you allowed us to come out and surveil your land a little bit before you started your project.
Mm-hmm.
We really appreciate that.
Yeah.
That's something very few people are willing to do. Now, we've had people include us in land surrounding the intended site at the prison, but not because they were planning on breaking ground and might affect something that we would consider sacred, but that they were showing us what they had on their land that might contribute to the spot. So yours comes from a different place. You're just out of respect for us and what we hold sacred, letting us come out. And I think that's something that the state could easily do. They've had every opportunity. They seem to be going to great lengths to ignore us.
The letter we got from the advisory council, the lead agency determining this, was the agency can allow you, if you have an interest, yes, they can agree to have you consult with you. They don't have to say, no, you're not on the list. But they always say, no, you're not on the list. Even though they're residents and citizens of the state, and in this case, we have lineal descendants. That is inappropriate, and that violates the letter of what the Advisory Council on Historic Preservation mandates historic preservation to be, which is open to all citizens. They have shut it off to a whole segment of our population. Not only us, there are other ethnic groups shut off that should be allowed and recognized and are in other areas. The same laws apply. It's just it's being applied differently in our state. And the fact that we've now opened Blanchard Springs was celebrating with non-state Indians from I think is rather because we have in-state Indians, Caddo and Quapaw, and I didn't see them at that opening.
Mm-hmm.
That was Osage.
Right.
So I think there was political lucre that passed between the governor and the tribe. And they never talked about this. Mississippi River State Park, Mountain Magazine State Park, all that went through the public review process. This did not. It was a secret action done by the governor, exactly like the president is. She's starting a habit of doing secret things.
Well, and it kind of points to what happens to government when it gets too big to control. Really, is that it's a rare circumstance that you're going to find government voluntarily just do the right thing.
Yeah.
Because to your point, it was really easy to call you and say, "Hey, I'm going to dig something up out here. Come take a look."
Mm-hmm.
That's it. It's not a big deal. To your point, when you answered, y'all weren't going to try and take my land if you found something. You just want to make sure that there's nothing there that is important to y'all, and that should be important to anybody. And it's not a difficult process. Being respectful and being neighborly, respecting the people that have come before us, whether that's our elders or our cultural ancestors. It's not difficult, and it's the baseline. So when our government's falling below that baseline, it gives me a lot of pause.
Absolutely. And I think that's their ultimate, that may be their ultimate fear, to the spirit of what you were saying, that we're going to come in and take back. And that's actually been said to one of our chiefs by a politician. I won't say her name.
Just going to retake Arkansas.
Yeah, we don't want to. She said we don't want Indians in Arkansas because they'll want their land back.
Yep.
Why would they be worried about that?
She's in Little Rock. I'm just.
But does she recognize that she did take the Indians' land away from them?
Well, if
why they're guilty about an apprehension?
It's inherent in the language, right? I don't know. I mean, look,
that's an irrational fear.
Oh, yes.
When we moved out of Houston, I honestly don't remember the tribe that was in control of the area way back, but there's a rich cultural heritage there too. And in all of my dealings with any Indian tribe, I've never had any of them tell me that they're going to take anybody's land back. I don't think that that's a realistic fear.
Well, it's not, and it's a matter of they just don't want to share any power.
Or for you to cause any problems. I mean, at the end of the day, if you weren't going to cause a problem, they would have included you.
Well,
we could have helped them out and saved them a lot of money, but they didn't want that either.
Yeah.
No.
Hey, at the end of the day, that's from the government's perspective, that's how they should be looking at this,
Mm-hmm.
right? Is none of what's going on right now would have happened if they'd done the right thing. Not because we wouldn't be complaining about it, because we would have been willing to help and said, why don't you look over there instead of over there?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then, you know what? They'd probably be building a freaking prison by now. They still wouldn't be able to staff it, but that's beside.
Gravel and Grit has been doing that. I know you guys have been pulling listings and saying, what about this?
Yeah,
sending it to different legislators.
And even that stuff is more just about you can't tell me in good faith that this is the best place in the state to do this when that exists and that exists and that exists. Because we've been trying to be incredibly sensitive of, we don't want this project. We don't want to just make it somebody else's problem. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't think you can staff something like this in the middle of Little Rock, in the middle of Fayetteville. It doesn't matter. Arkansas can't handle this kind of facility. But I think it's still, as just kind of stewards of public trust, we're kind of beholden to the idea that an acceptable end goal is not just making it somebody else's problem.
And I like to try and provide a solution whenever I disagree. And I had spoken with Benny Magnus, about areas, and just as everybody has, tried to present an alternative. But what do you think the most pragmatic method of dealing with our prison need would be instead of building 3,000 bed facility in Franklin County?
Yeah, I mean, look, in a perfect world, we could rewind the clock a decade and be funding our corrections agencies adequately, because I think that would have prevented a lot of the problems that we're having now, right? In government, we shouldn't ever get to a point where we say, oh my God, we have a crisis, we need to throw $1 billion at it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the best answer as far as, what could we have done? What can we do now? I think we still have a lot of opportunity here, right? We do need some emergency capacity, because that's a real issue. But nothing like 3,000 beds. I think that's ludicrous. I don't think the state can afford to operate it. Again, I don't think they can afford to staff it. Even if that's smaller regional facilities, that's 3, 4, 5, 6 more facilities that are going to go into communities that are not going to want them, that are going to have similarly situated issues. Pragmatically, I think the best thing to do would have been to go forward with the plan to build a couple more beds at Calico Rock, give some emergency overflow relief. And that was, the numbers all run together, but $125 million, I think, was their end estimate for that. If you're going to spend $1 billion on a problem, spend $125 million on beds, and then let's look at rehabilitation centers and reentry centers and mental health facilities and all of these things that are actually going to make a dent in our recidivism rate, instead of just endlessly building concrete cells to put people in for the rest of forever. Right. Because where we sit right now in Arkansas, if we were to finish this project tomorrow, it would be full by the end of the year, and we need another prison. So if we don't address the underlying causes, we're never going to get out of this cycle, and the whole state is going to be a prison state.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes.
Now, don't the local sheriff's departments depend upon taking the overflow capacity right now to keep their doors open?
I think it's kind of a broad range. There are some facilities that do turn a profit on holding state prisoners. There are some that take a loss. There's also some that have built jail expansions on bonds that are cash flowed from the income that comes into the county from the state, from holding state prisoners. And if you take all the state prisoners out of those counties, they're going to have a bond issue, which means they have a tax issue, which nobody likes. So yeah, I think that's part of the problem.
Going to create a problem at some point.
Yeah, I think
opening of the prison.
I think they very well could, and that's not to say that it's a good system that we have, but it's a hole we've dug ourselves into, and there's got to be some realization of all of the strings that get pulled if you do build this new facility, because it's a lot more than just what's happening in Franklin County.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that I think there are definitely better ways to do it. I don't see why they wouldn't just add on to Calico Rock. And as a tribe, we're not opposing this project because we don't want a prison. We want there, to be ample facilities for those who deserve to be incarcerated. Obviously, we have. The last thing we want is to provide an environment for our citizens that is unsafe or unsecure in any way. And our argument isn't a NIMBY type argument either, because if we wanted to be technical, we could oppose it in 3/4 of Arkansas based on our treaty and promise rights. If they wanted to put it in Calico Rock and we decided we had a problem with it, we could raise just as much stink. No, I've talked to the board of corrections chairman and let him know that that's not the case. We're not just raising hell about this so we can get noticed and be a problem.
Sure.
We consider this site sacred because of the high probability of graves and artifacts and ceremonial significance here, and we have provided plenty of evidence to show that is present.
Right.
But still, no communication whatsoever.
Yeah.
No, not even an option for us to express our concern. At least the chairman did try to pass a motion for us to meet with the Board of Corrections. It didn't get that far. They just let it die on the floor. Senator King has sent 2, maybe 3 requests for us to meet with the governor. No answer. Any response the governor gives in a counter to our press conferences or any comment we've made when the media asks them, how would you respond? She said, the Chickamauga Nation is not a federally recognized tribe. What is a treaty? It's federal recognition it's recognition by the federal government. And we've been, we have 22 treaties. We're signatories on 22 treaties.
And I think there's kind of 2 layers to this problem, right? Is number one, the respect of the Chickamauga Nation as an entity, which is its own set of problems. But even if you don't recognize, respect, whatever the terminology is there, you're citizens of Arkansas.
Mm-hmm.
You're still taxpayers, voters. You still live here.
Mm-hmm.
Regardless of what they think about your claims or your rights outside of that or in addition to that, it's just emblematic of the way that they treat everybody else here. You're still a citizen. You still deserve to be heard. You still deserve to not be called absurd when you have a complaint. I mean, like I said earlier, these are just the basic blocking and tackling things of respect that a government that derives its power from the citizenry needs to have for that citizenry. And it's just a really sad thing when you don't see that.
Mm-hmm.
It means that also people like this, my dibbling in psychology, people that don't respect other people don't respect themselves to begin with. So there goes your good faith in your politician.
Or they respect themselves way more than they deserve.
This is true. I've never found that inside myself.
Yeah, it's a thing that a lot of good people lack.
I just don't quite have it. I don't gamble on myself, in other words.
No, it's hard to do.
We have gotten a lot of support and had more communication now with either the leaders that we are involved with or potential leaders such as yourself. And I hope that continues. I hope it's not in the cases where we have sitting senators and representatives. I know it's not the case. Well, they do recognize that there is a voter base that we have the ability to influence. I hope it's not the same for candidates. In other words, I hope that our ability to communicate the needs of our citizens is still an option if you acquire the Senate seat.
Well, and it will be with me, and I think that's demonstrable from my track record on all of this. I mean, the first time I talked to y'all was not when I decided to run for office, and listen, I have the same concerns about the prison itself. Is that just something that's a campaign issue because it has to be a campaign issue?
Yeah.
I truly hope that's not the case. Again, it's not for me. I jumped up after the town hall and it's been a whirlwind ever since, but it's been, I couldn't even give you a good faith estimate of how many hours I put into this project, and blood, sweat, tears, new sets of tires to run to Little Rock. Y'all tried to raise money here. It doesn't go exceedingly well. So a lot of funds out of my own pockets. I've poured a lot into this because this is such a great place to be, and it's such a great community. And I mean, I chose to live here. I chose to raise a family here. I want it to be the best place that it can be. I think it's kind of the reverse for me, for most candidates. I'm not against the prison and vocal about it because I'm running for office. I'm running for office because I'm against the prison and I'm vocal about it. Mm-hmm. And I've seen firsthand all of the problems that stem from this kind of decision making in our government. And it's not limited to the prison, but the prison is really emblematic of all of these issues.
And I know regarding the tribe, I mean, not day one because we didn't know you then, but as soon as we met you, I can't count how many times you've messaged me and said, if I can help you, let me know. Is there anything you need? Yeah. How can I help you? I have experience with this or that. You've been there.
I've at least I tried to be right. And I'll be the first to admit that I don't understand all of the legalities and the treaty law and the Constitution surrounding that and all of it. And I think that's really an important point to make about legislating is lawmakers don't get down there. You don't get elected and become an expert on everything. I'm not going to be a real estate expert. I'm not going to be an Indian affairs expert. I'm not going to be a construction expert, right? Yeah. I know the things that I have experience with in my personal life. And outside of that, I have to rely on members of the community that are experts. So building that relationship, again, it's not part and parcel of me running for office, but it's something that I certainly would want to continue should I get down there.